Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Your Two Shelves. Today I am doing my wrap up for the month of May. I had a really good reading month of May. I read 8 books in total, and yeah, I'm just gonna kick off and talk about them now. So the first book that I read was an audiobook, and it was called More Myself by Alicia Keys, and it was Alicia Keys' memoir. So I came across this because there was a sale on Audible. I think it was like a 2 for 1 or something, and I saw it and listened to the sample and was immediately drawn in. And it's read by Alicia Keys. She's not somebody that I knew I didn't know much about her at all, really. I like her music. I didn't know much about her as a person at all. I remember there being something in like the media a couple of years ago about her opinions on makeup and stuff. I remembered that, but I didn't really know much about her. And the book is absolutely outstanding. So it's her story basically from when she grew up in Hell's Kitchen in New York to a single mum, and how she then came to be the musician that she is today, like how she learned to play classical piano when she was little, and how like all the things she's kind of learned about herself as she's gone through this journey, and how crazy her life became, you know, when people were scheduling like every minute of her day and she was surviving on like 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And she sort of then had this time where she just had to say stop, and she went to Egypt and had like this kind of I guess like her own retreat in Egypt, and sort of saw things from a new perspective after that. And her first son is actually called Egypt. So her writing was really great, like hearing her read it herself. She's such an amazing person. Like she's a philanthropist and activist. She does so much for other people and for charity. She's not flashy or showy. I saw people on Goodreads criticise this because it wasn't salacious and it wasn't like a celebrity gossip memoir, and I couldn't, like, I was like, that's why it's so good, because it's about her talking honestly about how it feels to build a relationship with her husband's ex and the children he has with her, and it talks honestly, and it's not like bitchy or like gossipy in any way, and I respect that massively. And how it's very much about like womanhood and strength and creativity, and I absolutely loved it. Like if I could give it 6 stars, I would. It's fantastic, and I just think she's amazing. So that was the first one that I read. The second one I read was this one. This is The Legacy by Katherine Webb. I've had this for years on my TBR, and the reason I read it was the month when I was doing I think it was in March, when I was doing the rainbow spines, and this was my green spine. And this one, it was in April I was doing that, and this one then came over into May. So this is one where I really enjoyed reading it, but the details are definitely fading, and I gave it 4 stars after I'd finished, but now I'd probably give it 3 stars just because it's fading in my mind. So this follows 2 sisters, Erica and Beth, and they've gone back to this old house that they used to visit every summer as children, and it belongs to their grandmother, Caroline. And Caroline's always been like a really cold and distant person. And when they're going through her things, they find a photo of Caroline holding a baby, but it was before she got married and she was in America. And so they're like, who is this baby? And then we're also following Caroline in the early 1900s in America, when she's gone out there and she's fallen in love and married a man. And we know the very first scene of the book is her trying to hide this baby. So it then follows a dual timeline narrative through both times, where we're hearing from both sides of the family to try and find out who this baby is. And what happened. And also there's a modern day mystery because the girl's cousin Henry disappeared when they were kids and they never found out what happened, but they know that they were involved in some way, they just can't remember. And so yeah, that's also another part of it. So it was really I really enjoyed it, and I read it quickly, but it's probably one that's not going to stay in my head, but I still recommend it. If the language changed slightly, I just realised I hadn't brewed my tea, so I just had to go and nip off and do that. So yeah, the next one I read was Slay by Brittney Morris. This was a fantastic read. This is a YA book, and it follows our protagonist called Kira, who is in high school. I think she's probably like 17, 18, and she has created a virtual reality game called Slay. And Slay is a game for black players only, and it is a safe space where they can go and game without experiencing any racism or abuse from white players, basically. So she's created this whole game. You have to sort of be referred by someone to like by another player to join, and you have to have an access code to ensure that it's regulated who can actually join. And they basically like battle each other, and they can create their own avatars and do these battles, and it's really, really popular. And she does it all in secret, so her family doesn't know, her boyfriend doesn't know. Her boyfriend is really anti-gaming. Her boyfriend says that it's like the downfall of black men to game, and he's quite controlling of like what he thinks she should be reading and doing with her spare time and stuff like that. And he doesn't obviously know about this either. So when everything's going fine, and then there's this big tournament coming up. There's a big tournament, and one of the main characters or one of the main avatars doesn't show up for the tournament, and then it turns out that he has been murdered over the game in real life. And so then there's this huge all over the news about Slay and how it completely gets misconstrued. So instead of being like a safe space for black gamers, it turns into like, is this for gangs and violence? And it completely gets misconstrued by the press. And then obviously she's even more worried about what to do because nobody knows it's her that's created this game. So it's really fantastic. It's kind of got Ready Player One vibes a little bit, which I really loved Ready Player One as well. But it brings into focus like race as well, obviously, is the central theme of the book. And I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I'd highly recommend, and it's got an absolutely stunning cover as well, which is always good. My next book that I read was Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi. So this one was on the Booker, I can't remember if it was long list or short list, and it was on the long list for the Reading Women. No, I always call it the Reading Women's Prize, the Women's Prize for Fiction. And I had heard really good things about this from Kieran from KD Books, and it was one of his favourite books of the year, so that's why I put it on my list to read. And I was really disappointed with it. I didn't really like it. So it follows a woman called Tara who is in India, or she's Indian, and her mum was raised her in she raised her in like a commune to start off with, and her mum was very I don't know, she's very like, it seemed like she was quite depressed, her mum, and she didn't do a good job at parenting Tara. So Tara has this really weird relationship with her mum, but her mum is, in the story, her mum's now developed dementia, and so Tara brings her mum to live with her, or to stay with her and her husband. And Tara is a really strange character as well. Like, she says she's an artist, but all she does is draw the same picture every single day, and she copies the day before's picture to see how the first picture and the last picture are going to differ from each other. And she's just kind of strange. And her husband is American Indian, but he's come to India, and I think he'd quite like her to move to America. And it's kind of just, yeah, there's not a lot of plot to it. It's quite different how it sounds in the synopsis on the back. I didn't like Tara, I didn't like her mum. I didn't feel like we got a huge amount of knowledge about the characters. There wasn't much in the way of plot, which is okay if if we really like the writing and the characters, but I didn't. And I just found this was kind of like a 2-star book for me. I just didn't really enjoy it, I'm afraid. So yeah, that was the worst one of the month for me. Then I read, I reread a childhood favourite, which was Carrie's War by Nina Bawden. So I remember reading this at junior school, and I remember loving it, and I asked for it for Christmas a couple of years ago. One, because I wanted to reread it, and two, so that I can read it with my kids soon. And this is just lovely. So this is set in World War II England, and it's about Carrie and Nick, who are brother and sister, and they get evacuated during the World War to stay in, I think is it Wales, isn't it? Yeah, they go and stay in Wales, and they are with this family, Mr. Evans and his sister, who they call Auntie Lou. Auntie Lou's lovely. Mr. Evans is like super, super strict, so everything's about religion and about like they're not allowed to go up and down the stairs in case they wear the carpet out. So in the mornings, anything they might want for the whole day, they have to bring downstairs because they're not allowed back upstairs till bedtime, so they don't wear the carpet out. They're not allowed to use the indoor toilet. Everything's like very mean and very stingy. And then they meet a family who live down the road, a lady called Hepzibah and the people who live with her, and they very much love them. But there's a kind of a sort of a story that something bad's happened as well, and so that's like a little kind of mystery. But yeah, it's really lovely, and I still enjoyed it a lot as an adult, and I've got one other of Nina Bawden's books that I really loved as a child to read as well, so that was really lovely to revisit. The next one I read was another not very good read, sadly. So I buddy read this with Sean from Past Story Time, and it was Euphoria by Lily King, which I got from the library. The reason we wanted to buddy read this was because we both read Writers and Lovers last year, and it was on both of our Books of the Year list, and that's also by Lily King. We absolutely loved it, and so we just said, let's do another buddy read of one of her books. We picked this one at random. I don't think we really sort of looked into what it was about. We just assumed it would be good. But we both didn't like it, unfortunately. So it's set in, I can't remember when it's set. I think it's set, in the early 1900s. And it follows 3 anthropologists, a husband and wife team, and a third man, who are in Papua New Guinea, studying the indigenous people. And it wasn't really like clear what she was trying to tell us with the book, because she didn't really make a point of the anthropologist doing anything particularly. Well, there is one thing they do which is really awful, but they're kind of not, it's not there to say they shouldn't, the book doesn't say they shouldn't be there, or that they are, or that they should be there. It doesn't really tell us too much about the customs of the indigenous people. The husband is really unlikable, and there's a sort of there's a love triangle between the 3 of them, but it's not really that intense. So we weren't really sure like what was the actual point of the book, which is such a shame because I loved Writers and Lovers so much. So I gave it 2 stars, and so did Sean. But I definitely want to try another Lily King, because I think it's just that maybe we picked the wrong book for both of us. So we will try another one, and hopefully that will be as good. It's absolutely beautiful weather this week, and I'm quite hot. So next was, so my list is my little book journals over there, so I keep looking that way. Next was a fantastic book, another audio book, and that was This Close to OK by Leesa Cross-Smith. I heard about this one. I think I heard about it from Karen Evans, and she really liked it. And this was, like I said, one I got on Audible and listened to straight away. And it's narrated by two different people. And the premise, you have to kind of suspend belief a little. But the premise is that there's a therapist called Tally who is on the way home from work when she sees a guy who is standing on a bridge. He's about to jump. And she gets out of the car and she manages to talk him down, and she feels like she can't just leave him there, so she asks him if he wants to go and get a coffee, and he says okay. And she's kind of the whole time thinking, God, I don't even know who this guy is. Can I trust him? Is he dangerous? Like, should he be getting in the car with me? This is like kind of crazy, but what the hell? And she's recently divorced. Her husband, she was trying for a long time with IVF with her husband, and it didn't work, and her husband then had an affair and got that woman pregnant and left Tally for her. So she's got quite a lot of hurt going on in her life, so that makes her a little bit more reckless. So anyway, they go for a coffee, and this guy eventually tells her his name is Emmett, and he won't tell her anything about his backstory. And well, they have a coffee, and then this is the bit we have to suspend belief a little bit. She asks Emmett if he wants to come and stay the night at her place, like not in a like sexual way, but just like in a, I don't know, you don't have anywhere to go kind of way. So he does, and we're basically spending mainly just the weekend with them, and I absolutely loved this story. So there's some really serious themes because Emmett is like suicidal. We know he's had a trauma which has happened, which has made him suicidal, but we kind of have to get that out piece by piece of what's actually happened. But it's done in a way where it's talked about without being bleak at all. Like, it's very cozy. Like, some of the stuff, like Tally is a really warm person, and she's really into kind of hygge, and she likes having like candles and like nice teas and coziness and warm jumpers and just kind of stuff like that to help her, little things to help her feel better, and that gives the book a real kind of cozy feeling. And Emmett, we like him, we trust him, but can we trust him? We don't really know. And yeah, that like their families come into it, and it's just such a good, it's such that perfect mix of a great story, really good writing, really caring about the characters, loving the character development, and not a bleak story. So I couldn't recommend this enough. I gave this 5 stars. Really good. And then the last book that I read was called Trans Voices by Declan Henry. Yeah, that is his name. So this is one I've got from the library. So Declan Henry isn't trans. He is a gay man. He's a social worker, and he decided to write this book. And he doesn't really go into why he decided to write this book, but he did. And it's basically, he's divided the book into sections, kind of about language, there were sections about surgery, there were sections about non-binary, about cross-dressing, and yeah, just different. Oh, and also about activism and and transphobia as well. So I would say that it's basically told through interviews with different trans people, and I thought that it was good in the way that it's a good introduction. And it's also, I thought it was really good how there was a whole section on non-binary people as well, because I think non-binary people are often left out of discussions when it comes to sort of trans voices. But my big criticism of this book is that it was completely non-intersectional. So there was no mention at all of different races' opinions. There was no mention of culture, that other than in history, which cultures had more than one gender as kind of the norm for their culture. There was no mention of disabled people, and it was all very, I assume, from a kind of white, non-disabled perspective, because that's the names, none of the names in the book were non-sort of British names. And so I just feel like it's a real shame that this was written from a sort of white, able-bodied perspective, and there were no black or Asian or any other ethnicity voices that were apparent in the book, and there was nothing about disability, which I found a real shame, because you can't write about a section of society and leave out the whole rest of the that community. So that was disappointing. So I only gave it 3 stars for that reason. But I think if you're keen to learn more about what it might like to be trans or non-binary, or you have some, you just want to educate yourself more, I think it's a good starting place. But I think it's just a real shame that it left out a big section of society. So that was all the books that I read in the month of May. I'm trying to think what month it was. So it was I would say overall, a really good reading month because of Alicia Keys, Slay, and This Close to OK. They were all brilliant. I'd highly recommend checking those out. So if you've read any of those, I'd be really keen to hear your comments, or if you'd like to read any of them, or if you've just got a great book that you read in May that you'd like to recommend to me. It's always really nice to comment, so say hi, and it'll be lovely to hear from you. And I hope you have a lovely week. I hope it's sunny where you are and you're enjoying the weather, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.